Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hive's Starter for 10, the third in a trilogy, a little bit like Star Wars in that sense, in that we're not only going to have three good ones, though, so don't worry about that. I'm your host, as always, Ben. Very pleased to still be joined by our Director of People Science, Ryan Tahmassebi. Ryan, good morning.
Morning, Ben. Morning, everyone.
So, I'm just going to quickly sum up what we talked about in the last video, right? And again, for the benefit of anyone who might be coming to this party a little bit late, if you want to go back and watch the other two videos, pause us right now, go catch yourself up, won't be offended, get back into this one and you'll be able to understand the context a little bit more. But if you're like, look, I just want the information now, here it is. We've looked at ways that you can improve we've looked at ways you can improve your participation rates by using personalization. And the really quick summary for that is, essentially, it improves the buy-in amongst your workforce. People understand the motives for the organization doing it. You can clear up any issues around confidentiality and also how you intend to use that data. You're getting a much wider data points as well. You're letting people tell you the types of questions that they want to ask and be asked. And likewise, because they feel like it's something that is being done for them rather than to them, you kind of get over that initial kind of skepticism and cynicism. Does that feel like a fair summation, right?
Yeah, pretty much bang on.
Fantastic. So I think a nice way to follow that on would be, how else can we improve participation rates amongst the people that carry out our surveys? And then I suppose take us one step further in that, Ryan. What does like a quote unquote good response rate look like?
Yeah, it's a really interesting area with surveys, isn't it? Because it's almost the way it's reported inside organizations, or the way in which targets are set for a response rate. It's almost like the response rate is given as much importance as the overall engagement score that comes from it. And those two data points are often kind of given the most focus and attention. And, it can often be a challenge kind of getting leaders and managers to really get into the detail of the true insights and the true feeling and perception that's coming from the workforce. So response rates is often one of those initial kind of high-level metrics that is the first question. What level of participation did we get? Did we get a good response rate? Is it higher than it was last year? So there is almost a pressure on businesses to try and drive a high response rate. And of course, a response rate can be an indicator of engagement in itself. And some of the research we've shown, and certainly kind of analysis we've done on labour turnover as well, has indicated that participation can be an indicator of intention to leave. So for that reason, it is important to understand the response rate, but it's important to understand the authentic response rate. And what I mean by that is people who give feedback because they want to, rather than feeling like they've been kind of pressured into doing it or incentivized to complete the survey. So what a good response rate looks like to me is a response rate that gives you confidence in the data set being representative of the whole workforce or a particular team or a department if you're looking at the data at that level. But even more so, a good response rate is one where all of the data is a true feeling. It's representative of the true feeling of colleagues across the workforce. So an example of that is, I would rather have a 60% response rate where all of the answers and responses are honest and really kind of sincere views, where people have kind of expressed that vulnerability to say, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is my perception of working for this organization currently. To me, that would be better than an 80% response rate where there's a lot of false positives in there because people have been, pressured or even hounded into kind of completing it. Or they've been incentivized, if you complete this, we'll do this or we'll do that. Because what you're essentially doing is you're opening up the possibility for people to just say, all right, I'll do this survey, and then just click through it kind of really quickly, just to kind of to be able to say, right, that I can be left alone now. That's done. So for me, the most important thing as a practitioner is to be able to be fully confident when you're going through the data set that the data is valid and it's really meaningful insight. So that's always my first challenge to practitioners, is to, when thinking about a good response rate, it's really making sure that you've got an authentic, representation of how people are feeling. But in an ideal scenario, you also want to have the majority of a workforce kind of responding. So 60 to 70% as a minimum would be something that we would be looking for a bigger baseline survey, a temperature check of how the whole organization are feeling. If you were doing more frequent kind of pulse surveys, that were being delivered with some kind of regularity, quarterly, monthly, you would maybe anticipate that the response rate might drop slightly, because if people are really busy, they might think, oh, well, I'm not going to complete this one, but I know there's another one coming in a month's time or in the next season, so I'll complete it then. So we all always anticipate a small drop off in response rate for those pulse surveys. But we have to think about what drives people to want to respond to a survey, right? That's the important thing. Anytime you get a survey, if you hang up the phone to a customer service department, maybe you've been calling about your mobile phone bill, or you've been calling about your utility bills at home, or you want to change anything to do with a particular service that you're getting in your house, you'll always be asked, are you okay to complete a short survey after this? So we're always asked to give our feedback on things as consumers, not just as employees. We've been to a restaurant, we've stayed in a hotel, we're asked to leave a TripAdvisor review. So it's constant. We're always being asked for feedback. And neither you or I will complete every single survey that we're asked to do, right? And it's
Absolutely
because
not.
when you get asked something, when you get asked for feedback, either consciously or subconsciously, you will do a risk-reward analysis in your head of how worthwhile is it for me to do this. So that's what our employees are doing. And they're weighing up things like you touched upon. Is this going to be confidential? If I say anything negative, is it going to come back to haunt me in any way? Is it going to be held against me in any way in a future kind of conversation with a manager, or if I go for a promotion in the future? All of these different kind of things. Will the feedback even be heard, or will it go into a black hole? Is it worthwhile me saying and pouring my heart out as to where I feel we could improve at work, where I experience challenges in my current role? Will that even be listened to? Will it lead to any change? They're all the kinds of things that are going through someone's mind when they're sent a survey, as well as thinking, well, is this going to take too long? What's the user experience going to be like? So what we need to do as organizations is think about how can we tip the scales in favor of the reward, the potential benefits, the opportunity for completing the survey. And really the only way to do that is to build confidence in people. So if people have been asked surveys time and time again, and it hasn't really led to action, they're not all of a sudden, just because an organization positions a new approach to surveying, think, right, it's going to be totally different this time. So we have to build confidence and actually anticipate that that's a challenge that we're going to face. So we need to make sure that people feel confident action is going to be taken. We need to make sure people feel confident that no matter what they say, how sincere they are in their feedback, that it's going to be used constructively. They're all of the kind of challenges that we have to make sure that people actually want to take part in the survey, rather than feel like they have to take part in it.
Yep. So it sounds like what you're saying here, Ryan, is that there is a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. Sort of however inclusive your strategy is as a practitioner, like whether you do want to go out and, kind of include all these other stakeholders from the parts of the business, or whether you say you have an idea of the type of like beats that you want to hit as it relates maybe to a wider baseline, right? Like you still kind of have to go out and get amongst people in advance of the survey taking place and really hammering home that message about why you're doing it, what the benefits are and things like that.
Yeah, and there are little things that you can do. Yes, some of these things will take time. If you have a widespread cynicism about how likely the data will be truly listened to and actioned, then that you can only really address that by building confidence slowly, by doing the surveys, albeit if you get a smaller response rate, but actually really making sure the business hears about actions that are being taken, and specifically linking those actions and those changes back to the survey feedback so that people make those associations and understand. But also there are some other little tips and tricks that practitioners can think about, such as making clear what the post-survey timeline looks like as part of the pre-survey communications. So often we'll send something out and say, there's a survey going live on such and such a day. We'd love to hear your feedback. Please take part. We want to hear your honest views. And then once the survey closes, the organization will start to think, right, what are the high level insights? When are we going to share this with the business? When can we get a leadership team together to discuss it? If you can plan that timeline out ahead of the survey, get dates in diaries with a leadership team, get dates in diaries for managers to take their team through the results, so that before the survey even goes live, you can, as part of your communications, share that timeline. What it does is it'll give a totally different feeling to colleagues than what they've had before, because that black hole fear of, right, the survey is going to close, when will I ever even hear what comes of it? You're already starting to address that challenge and break down some of those barriers, because you're saying, well, actually, survey closes on this date. 4 days later, the leadership team are going to be going through the high level results. A week after that, your manager is going to be sitting down with your whole team and doing some exploration of the results and having some ideation type conversations around what does this mean for us? What actions could we perhaps deliver locally that'll make a difference? And anything else that the organization has planned in. The more that you can communicate, the better. And then, of course, when the survey closes, going out again and thanking people for taking part and almost reaffirming and reinforcing those timelines again, it just keeps that energy and that momentum. But that visibility as well is the key word of what's actually happening next and when it's going to happen. All of those things can actually have a really big impact because they build confidence in people.
It's making sure that people know that really the survey is just the very start of the process. It isn't like once the survey's been carried out, that's it, thanks very much. It's like, actually, this is what we need to even begin to make these improvements that we suspect you want us to be able to make.
Yeah, it's a conversation starter, isn't it? And that comes to how we approach analyzing the data and actioning it off the back of it. Is that particularly if we think the types of questions that are asked on surveys, they're going to pull out themes that can be conversation starters for constructive, solution-focused conversations around, well, right, what does this mean? How can we go about driving some change around this area? And moving that conversation to be more focused on bottom-up kind of ideation from colleagues right across the business, rather than expecting a manager or a leader to look at a data set and just say, right, I believe this is what we need to do. This is an action we're going to take. Of course, we need them to play a part, but we want our colleagues to be involved in those action planning conversations as well. What will really make a difference? This is what we've heard and we've understood. What do you really think we could do to drive some change? What's one thing that you think could really make a difference within our team? And so you can start to create some of those kind of local action plans that way. And make it really inclusive again, which is a word and a theme which we've touched upon in the previous videos as well. Make the action planning feel inclusive. Don't put all the pressure on one line manager or one group of leaders to come up with all of the answers as to what they should do off the back of the survey. Keep colleagues involved and included in it.
Amazing. Well, that brings us full circle straight back to kind of episode 1, if you like, which is, it really does just reiterate and reinforce the importance of having that all-inclusive strategy straight from the get-go. So I think we'll leave it there for another episode of Starter for 10. Ryan, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ben. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.